This is continuing coverage and the trial of Richard Merritt from the Hidden Killers podcast on the True Crime Today network.
Y'all may be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are now ready to continue on with the testimony. The state will call its next witness.
The state calls Steve Queen.
I do. Yes, it's Steve Queen. First name Steve, S-T-E-V-E. Last name Queen, Q-U-E-E-N.
We have two Mr. Queens in court this morning.
Sorry about that, Your Honor.
Mr. Queen, how are you employed?
I'm employed with CSRA Probation Services.
What does CSRA do?
We're a misdemeanor probation service provider, and we also provide electronic monitoring services for various courts and agencies across the state.
Do you provide, or have you provided services, electronic monitoring services for the Cobb County courts?
Yes. At one point in time, we were under contract with Cobb County Magistrate Court to provide electronic monitoring for bond supervision cases, working with their pretrial services division.
Okay, and were you all working in that capacity back in 2019?
Correct.
How do you monitor individuals who are out on bond or under court order?
Typically in that particular location, we did so with a GPS ankle monitor that's secured around the offender's ankle.
And I just realized, I think some of these witnesses are these jurors are going to have a hard time seeing them, so I'm going to back this up a little bit. We'll use it in a few minutes here.
Yes.
No vision. All right. Can you explain to the jurors how an ankle monitor works?
Sure. There is a GPS ankle monitor which is attached via a rubberized strap around the offender's ankle. Because of the curvature of an ankle, it's attached tight enough to where it cannot be slipped off. And that GPS device contains a SIM card which communicates information about the GPS location of the ankle monitor through the cell network, and it has a GPS tracking dot in it. There are multiple satellites that circle the globe, military and commercial satellites, and they're always pinging GPS locations on the globe. That device is set up with a specific unique number that identifies that GPS dot inside that device, just like any other common device in a car, cell phone, etc. And when there is a triangulation of enough satellites, typically the minimum is between 6, and I've seen it as many as 12, then you get a GPS location on the globe.
So are you able to determine the location of someone who's wearing one of your ankle monitors?
Yes.
All right. Do you use any particular software system?
Yes, the particular manufacturer of the ankle monitor in question in this case was a company called Attenti at that time.
Can you spell that for the court reporter, please?
Sure can. A-T-T-E-N-T-I.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you can continue about Attenti.
And they have a case management software system that we use, and it basically retrieves the information from the ankle monitors and converts it into a case management system that we can view and review.
Do you have to be at a particular office or at a particular computer to see the GPS location of an ankle monitor?
No, it's a web-based system, so you can access it from any laptop computer, and they also have a smartphone app, which I use frequently.
And what happens when an individual removes an ankle monitor?
The device has a couple of different tamper detection features on it. As I indicated, the rubberized strap comes from one end of the ankle monitor, circles around their ankle, and is attached to the other side by plastic connections. The only way to remove it is to either cut the strap or to break those connections. When that's done, there's a fiber optic strand that runs through the middle of that rubberized strap. So basically one side of the ankle monitor is shooting out a beam of light that's picked up by that fiber optic strand. It goes in a circle, picked up by the other. So there's just hands off and receives in a circle, in a circuit, so to speak. So when that connection is cut, that is severed, or when the plastic connections are broken, that is severed. And the ankle monitor knows that information and sends that data to the system via cell connection.
Does it send that data immediately?
It takes about 90 seconds for me to receive it once it occurs.
All right. What was your relationship with Richard Merritt?
I was handling his ankle monitor case for Cobb County Pretrial Services.
Okay, and did you ever meet with him?
I think there may be an occasion that I might have. I can't recall exactly, but I was aware of his case and had spoken with him on the phone about various matters. Okay,
and was he wearing one of your ankle monitors after he was sentenced by the Cobb County Superior Court on January 18th of 2019 until February 1st of 2019?
Yes, he was.
Do you know what the conditions were of his Cobb County sentence when he was sentenced on January 18th of 2019?
I received a telephone call from his pretrial services officer. I think it was that Monday of that week, and she advised me that...
Mr. Queen, you can't tell us what she said, but you can tell us what you did as a result of what she may have told you.
Okay.
Let me ask the question again. Were you aware of the conditions of his sentence in terms of your involvement?
Yes, my understanding was that he had been sentenced and he was to turn himself into the Cobb County Jail by that following Friday at 5 p.m. And he was to wear his ankle monitor until he did so.
I don't know how to get a green screen here. Here we go. Okay. Alright, I'm going to show you what has previously been admitted as State's Exhibit 2. This is the Cobb County sentence. Looking at that, is that the condition of his sentence that you were aware of?
Yes.
And what does it say at the top of this page here? The highlighted portion?
From the entry of this sentence until defendant reports to the jail on February 1st, 2019, as described above, defendant shall continue to comply with all the conditions of his bond order and his pretrial release requirements, including wearing his ankle monitor.
Did you personally install the monitor on the defendant?
No, that was another individual that went to the Cobb County Jail to do so in March of 2018, I believe.
Okay. And after he entered his guilty plea, can you describe that, how somebody else was, when he was originally bonded out the previous year, was CSRA involved in monitoring him?
Not at that time. There was another provider that transitioned over us just a couple of months after that, a few months after that.
Did you take over the monitoring at some point?
Yes.
Okay. And did you personally monitor his particular ankle monitor?
Yes.
What were the parameters of the defendant's conditions of his sentence and bond? Did he have any kind of curfew?
He did, as I recall, he had a curfew from 5 p.m. in the evening to 8 a.m. in the morning that he had to be at his home residence in Stone Mountain.
All right. And do you know the address where he was living?
Planters Row or Planters Walk in Stone Mountain.
Do you know who he was living with?
He lived with his mother, Shirley Merritt.
Okay. And during the time that you monitored the defendant, was he generally compliant?
Yes.
Did you ever speak with Shirley Merritt during the course of your monitoring the defendant?
We had Miss Merritt's cell phone number in our records, and I think there was a time I was trying to contact Mr. Merritt, and I called and spoke to her, and she might have relayed a message, but that would have been my only time. It was not a frequent interaction.
All right. And were you aware that a condition of the defendant's sentence was to turn himself into the Cobb County Jail on February 1st, 2019 by 5 p.m.?
Yes.
Did you make any specific efforts to monitor him that day, the day he was supposed to report to the Cobb County Jail?
I made a mental note that I needed to be sure at 5 o'clock to check his GPS location just to ensure that he was at the Cobb County Jail. If not, I needed to contact pretrial services.
Okay. And were you monitoring him through your cell phone?
Yes, through the smartphone app that gives us access to that information.
Did the defendant turn himself in as ordered?
No.
Can you describe just what you recall happening that day?
Sure. It was about 4 o'clock on that afternoon, and I received what's called a strap alert on my cell phone via text. And that's an alert that tells me that an offender's strap has been compromised in some kind of way. So at the time, I was pulling up to the daycare to pick up my children that afternoon. So I sat there in my truck and I pulled up the app and I looked at his GPS location and I saw that he was not in Marietta at the Cobb County Jail. He was actually at a location off of Interstate 75 in White, Georgia, just north of Cartersville, where I live.
Did you obtain the attendee records for the defendant's ankle monitor for the day of February 1st of 2019?
Yes, I'd been requested by Lance Cross with the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office, as well as Lieutenant Keith McQuinlan with the DeKalb County Police Department to review his GPS records and provide those to them.
Your Honor, at this time I'm going to move to admit State's Exhibits 51 and State Exhibit 52 via the business record exception. This is the attendee records, including the map that was provided by attendee showing the defendant's ankle monitor whereabouts the day of February 1st, 2019.
Any objection?
No objection to 51.
Admitted.
And did you personally also make a timeline of the events that day?
Yes, at Mr. Cross's request, I've developed just a brief timeline of that day.
All right, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 50. Can you explain to the jury what this is?
Yes, that would be the email that I sent to Detective McQuinlan with the DeKalb County Police Department on the Sunday afternoon based on his request, and it's the timeline of Mr. Merritt's GPS activity on February 1st, 2019.
And did you obtain that timeline from the GPS records that were just admitted into evidence?
Correct. What I did is I pulled up the information, reviewed the GPS locations and the map locations, and basically the times that were associated and the locations that were associated with that activity, and developed this chronology.
Have there been any material alterations or deletions in that timeline that you created?
It looks exactly like what I developed back then.
At this time, I move to admit State's Exhibit 50 into evidence.
The defense was objecting is not hearsay. I looked at the officer and testified to memory, but the contents of that document are hearsay.
In what way?
That they're out of court statement, they are made today to offer proof of the matter that is asserted, which is the date and time, location.
This witness just testified that he reviewed the documents that have already been admitted and created the timeline based on that information. So how is that hearsay?
And typically that you could testify to what those are, but the writing that is on that paper would be an out-of-court statement that is made for the truth of the matter asserted.
Did you want to respond?
Your Honor, I just think that it's Mr. Queen's own notes that he wrote. He's on the stand and can be cross-examined about that.
I don't understand how the information itself is admissible, but putting it on a map makes it inadmissible.
My objection would be that the conclusions that are in the email are derived from his review of those documents.
Let me see the document. I'll admit 50 over objection.
All right, Mr. Queen, I am going to show you page 1 of the attendee records, which is State's Exhibit 51. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but this first column that I've highlighted, can you explain to the jury what that shows?
Yes, this is basically out of the case management system, a report that we can generate that will indicate each GPS location that is taken from the ankle monitor of an offender's that is wearing, and it gives the date and time stamp of that GPS location, the speed, if there is any, if it's in movement, the direction it's heading, the latitude and longitude on the globe, and a geocoded address to that latitude and longitude.
All right. And what is shown in the second and third columns of this record?
As I said, that would be the speed and heading of the ankle monitor if it was in movement.
And is that in miles per hour?
Yes.
And what about this next row, these next two rows? What does that show?
That shows the latitude and longitude points of the GPS location of the ankle monitor at that time.
And finally, what are we looking at here in the last row on the attendee records?
The system will take the latitude and longitude that's indicated there, and then it will match it up to an address that is recorded on the globe.
Mr. Queen, if we look at this first page, the address is listed all the way from the first to the last entry as 1590 Planters Row in Stone Mountain. What is significant about that address?
As I recall, that's the offender's address at the time, his home address.
And back to the first row, which you described as the date and time stamp, is that recorded in Eastern Standard Time or DeKalb County time?
Yes, it is.
All right. What time did the defendant leave home initially? Let me actually go back. We've admitted State's Exhibit 52. What is that?
This is a map that the system generates using Google Maps, basically taking the information that's on that report and putting it on a map view so you can visualize it that way.
And what do these green, I know it's hard to see, but they're arrows. What do those green arrows represent?
The green arrows typically indicate the location of the GPS ankle monitor at the time, as well as the direction that it's heading if it's in movement. If they're a circle, that means they're stationary. And
if we look at the top left corner of the exhibit, there is a line of red arrows. What do those represent? When the arrows or the dots turn red, that means that ankle monitor has some type of alert or violation. And in this case, these red dots indicate that that's when the strap had been severed. Okay. Was there movement after the strap had been severed? There was. Okay. And who was that movement by? That was me. I am going to show the jurors State's Exhibit 52A, which we are going to use as a demonstrative aid. And Mr. Queen, I am going to ask if you would step down from the podium so you can indicate what you're talking about on this exhibit, if that's all right. Yes. And you may take the exhibit with you, Exhibit 50, to refer to. Did you know about any appointments the defendant was to attend the morning of February 1st, 2019? I don't think that particular day I was aware of. And you know what? I'm actually going to ask you to stand here. And I'm just going to try to speak loudly. All right. Were you aware of any kind of appointments that the defendant had or was planning on attending the morning of February 1st? On that day or prior to that date, I was not. Okay. Do you know whether he left the house on Planters Row that morning? He did at approximately 8 o'clock that morning. Okay. You could speak into the microphone so we can hear you. What time did he leave the house that morning? It was approximately 8 o'clock that morning, okay. 8 a.m. Do you have the exact time? It says here 8 a.m. Okay. Now the highlight, what does that indicate? Is that the time that he left the house that morning? It looks like the departure time or where the address begins to change and it indicates movement. And do you know where he went? Well, first of all, where is the Planters Row address on this map? Right here. You can see here what appears like a large blob or a cluster of points. Is when a GPS ankle monitor is on the globe, and when it's displayed on this map, they're basically points sitting right on top of each other. So it creates a big blob. So that indicates a lot of stationary activity. Okay, and how is it labeled on that map? Here it's labeled as inclusion. It's cut off here, but home curfew, and it indicates the curfew time that he's allotted. That just helps us when we're reviewing maps to see that quickly and visually. Just for the record, Mr. Queen is testifying and pointing and indicating to the bottom right corner of the map. Correct. All right. And where did he go that morning? If we look at the records, can you tell which direction he went starting at 8 in the morning? Based on my review of his activity on that day, he left his home in Stone Mountain.
and proceeded to Interstate 285, indicated here. And then he proceeds north up Interstate 285 to this area here.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
To this area there, just north on 285. And at approximately 8:52 a.m. that morning, he arrives at what appears to be a business office location at 5887 Glen Ridge Drive, Sandy Springs. And I determined that by just geocoding the GPS point at that time, just to correlate it to an address.
And did he stay at that location for a while?
He really didn't. He wasn't there very long. When I reviewed his activity, it looked like he was in the parking lot of that particular business at that location, and he departs that location at 9:10, so he was there about 18 minutes, give or take.
Did he head back to the Planters Row location after that?
He did. He took the same route back home.
What time did he arrive at the Planters Row location after that?
He arrives home at 9:38 a.m.
Is that the timestamp that I've highlighted on the screen?
Yes.
I know it's hard
Yes.
to see, Mr. Queen. All right. Did the defendant remain at that Planters Row location for some period of time?
Yes, he did, for several hours until approximately 2:30 p.m. that afternoon.
Okay. And so between 9:38 and what time did you say?
2:30 p.m.
Did he ever leave that location between those hours?
Not that it's indicated, no.
So this highlighted portion of the attendee records, what does that indicate?
Once again, that indicates, and you can see to the right that it indicates the geocoded address. That's just those GPS points being at that location minute after minute.
Okay, is that the time that he remained at the Planters Row house?
That's correct.
And what time did you say he left the Planters Row house?
At approximately 2:30 p.m.
Where did the defendant go after he left the location? And do you have a precise time for the time that he left the location?
Based on my review, it was at 2:35 p.m. that I can verify that he's away from the location.
That he's away.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's typically done by looking at the first GPS point that's outside the residence location and typically on a roadway in travel mode.
Looking at this attendee record a little bit more closely, looking at page 9 of this attendee record a little bit more closely, it says Planters Row until about 2/3 down the page. What is the last timestamp at Planters Row?
The last timestamp noted here is 2:29 p.m.
Okay. And then what happens after that?
After that, the unit shows in movement, traveling 11 miles per hour at least.
And what time was that?
And that was at the 2:29. So that's basically him leaving that location. And the next GPS point is at 2:30 p.m. He's traveling 31 miles an hour, and it shows a different address at 6078 Windsong Way in Stone Mountain.
So can you say for certain that he left the Planters Row address at approximately 2:29 p.m.?
Correct.
And where did he go? Which direction did he go after that?
At that time from Stone Mountain, he traveled north to the Lilburn Norcross area, coming at a brief stop at 2:34 p.m. at an address at 5429 Old Tucker Road in Stone Mountain. And it looks like he just pulled through the parking lot of that address.
Do you know what that address was?
I didn't make a note at the time. It looked like a business of some sort.
I'm sorry.
As I recall, some type of business.
Okay. And then where did he go?
Then he proceeds north again to the Norcross area and arrives at 1602 Indian Trail Road, Lilburn Road in Norcross. And that is a Quick Trip gas station. I actually lived in that area at one time. I know that's what's located there.
Okay. And let's stop right there. What time did the defendant arrive at the Quick Trip gas station at 1602 Indian Trail in Lilburn? Lilburn Road in Norcross?
I have it noted at approximately 2:52 p.m.
And where on the map is that location?
That's going to be generally in this. That's going to be generally in this area right here.
And what kind of location is that?
It's a Quick Trip gas station.
And are you personally familiar with that?
Yes, I used to live in that area, so I'm familiar with that business there.
And are you aware that we've obtained surveillance video from that Quick Trip station?
I believe I was informed that.
All right. Your Honor, at this time, I've moved to admit State's Exhibit 72 via the business record exception. It is the QT video. Oh, excuse me for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Any objection, Ms. Wolf-Gruber? Admit it.
All right, Your Honor, and at this time I'm going to publish this for the jury. Mr. Queen, do you mind sitting down so the jury can...
You're listening to the trial of Richard Merritt from the Hidden Killers podcast on the True Crime Today network. Press subscribe now and get ad-free episodes by upgrading to our premium experience through Apple Podcasts. More next.